Faith grows in a chosen focus. Don't misplace our faith. Watch our focus. So I placed that faith in the power of God.
Jesus, we sing, we praise you, our King, we worship you, our Lord. You're the one that we adore. Your word stands alone. Your promises are your throne. We love you. We love you. We honor you. Adore you. We worship you. It's all you. We love you. We love you, our God. Our God. You are God. You are God. Stand in faith, immersed in your grace. We run the race just to see your face. We worship you, oh Lord. You're the one that we adore. Your word stands alone. Your promises are your throne. We love you. We love you. We honor you. Adore you. We worship you. Exalt you. We love you. We love you, our God. Our God. You are God. Your promises, they are your throne. Our faith is in you and you alone. Your promises, they are your throne. Our faith is in you. Your promises, they are your throne. Our faith is in you and you alone. Your promises, they are your throne. Our faith is in you. Your promises.
Welcome back to Living in the Power of Focused Faith. Marky and I really are glad you're with us today. And what we've been doing is we've been studying out of my book, Lost Your Faith? It's in Your Focus. It's in Amazon. And what we're doing is taking it chapter by chapter. However, I might take a couple of sessions to talk about one chapter, which is what we're going to do this time in chapter 2. We already have reviewed chapter 1 and the introduction and different aspects of faith and what faith is and how the aspects like being a gift, the aspects like it's got to be spoken, just different things. So if you haven't looked at the last week's, then go ahead and read the first chapter and the introduction. Then you get a real good foundation of what's going on here. But what we learned was that focused faith is what saves us. Our focus can either derail our faith. Our faith is planted in our focus, is what I'm getting at. So it can either be misplaced or derailed by our focus. Especially if it's a negative focus, forget about it. It can be horrible. If we put our faith in the focus of God, then awesome things start happening. And this is where we're starting today. We're starting to talk about Moses and the burning bush story. Most of you know this, but I would like you to read Exodus 3 and 4, simply because it's always good for you to read and get something more out of it. You might be able to get something that I totally missed or that speaks specifically to you. So anyway, let's go back to Moses. Oh, forgot. So the book is called Lost Your Faith. It's in your focus. And then at the end of each chapter, we have 4 questions. And these questions are for you to write down the answers to. What the questions do is they stimulate your mind to remember and to think about how you think about yourself and about the things that have happened in your past and how that has affected. I almost said infected, but that's true too. How it has affected and infected your mindset. So please, go back to the intro and go back to chapter 1, write down your answers to that, and that'll set the foundation. And then after this, I'd like you to go to the end of chapter 2 and start writing down your ideas and things that happened to you. And be honest. Don't try. There's nobody to impress here. And but if you're doing it in a group, again, I want to remind you that anything in that group, again, is not to be impressive on the other person, and it's not to be the things that the questions that are being asked are so personal that anything that you speak in the group must remain in the group, because we want the group to feel safe, that they can say what they need to say about the problems that they're having, and not feel threatened or not feel intimidated or embarrassed. Okay, I want them to feel safe. And you do too, I'm sure. And I suggest that we all pray for each other during the week. If it's a once a week Bible study, pray for those people in that group. It's really important. This can be a life changer, and just studying this way. So anyway, let's go back to Moses. So Moses was an old shepherd, which was a very yucky vocation at the time. You're always working and being around, smelly, dumb sheep all day. Awful. Okay. So he was herding his sheep, and then as they were resting, he saw a burning bush, and he's going, that burning bush isn't burning up. So he went to it because he was curious, right? And then all of a sudden, this big booming voice comes out of the bush. Moses, take off your shoes. This is holy ground. And Moses oh, and he took off his shoes and just started shaking. But what he was nervous about wasn't so much the voice or the fact that the bush was talking to him. Although, anyway, but what was really nerve-wracking was that God, through the bush, was calling him to deliver the people of Israel. The Israelites had been slaves for years, but God wanted Moses to deliver them, an 80-year-old shepherd. What's up with that, God? And that's exactly what Moses was thinking, I'm sure. So the backstory of Moses, though, is that he wasn't always a grumpy old shepherd, but he was a failure. It reminds me of an advertisement that I saw on TV, as well as a cartoonish thing, and then it was about this huge person was in front of this little tiny desk, and there were stacks and stacks and stacks of loan applications that were being denied. And so he had this huge stamp that said disqualified on it. So he would go, disqualified, disqualified, disqualified. And then it hit me. That is what we do with ourselves, just like Moses was doing with himself. He was already a failure. He had already disqualified himself. He was a shepherd now, but the backstory is that he was not always that shepherd. He was a baby that was born in slavery, right? But his mother at that time, Pharaoh, was really upset because he was afraid that the Israelites were going to take over because they were reproducing so fast. So he had all the male babies aborted at birth. Sounds familiar? Anyway, so he was having them aborted at birth. And the midwives were Israelites, and they weren't aborting them. They would say something like, well, these Israelite women, my goodness, they're so strong, so they were trying to help the babies. And one of them was Moses. Moses was born, beautiful baby. And the mother and the family, Miriam, his sister, they all tried to keep him quiet. How do you keep a 4-month-old baby quiet? Kind of hard. I had to, I know. Anyway, so she put tar on this basket and put blankets down and then put the baby in it and just said, God help. And so she put the baby in the Nile. And then Miriam watched the baby to make sure it was okay and it wasn't going to be eaten up by alligators. And then there was the princess that was bathing with her entourage, and she heard the baby crying. And she opened the basket, and there was Moses. She instantly fell in love. That was her baby. And then, of course, she needed someone to take care of the baby. So Miriam popped out of the bushes and said, hey, I know just the right person. I'll get her for you, which I think the princess might have known that it was Moses' real mother. So, okay. So she brought Moses' mom. Moses' mom raised him for a little bit and told him who he really was. Now, as he grew up, he was royalty. He was in the princess. He was in the castle. He was trained in all warfare. He was trained. His mind was keen. And all the latest and greatest education he got. But then he always had this knowledge that he was not an Egyptian. And then the Egyptians at that time, Egyptians now are pretty nice, but that time they were pretty mean under Pharaoh's regime. And so they would beat the slaves. They would do all kinds of things to make it hard for them. So Moses got really upset because one of his brothers was being beaten. So he got him away and he killed him in the fight. Okay, so then the next day or two, he comes back and 2 Israelites were fighting against each other. Not fighting, but arguing. And then he'd say, brothers, why are you arguing? We're supposed to be brothers. We're supposed to, and then they looked at him like, who made you our leader? And he said, are you going to do the same thing you did to the Egyptian and kill me too? Whoa, that really got to Moses because he knew that if it got around like this, it's getting to Pharaoh and his life was going to be gone. So he ran. The big, courageous leader ran and put a cloak on of a shepherd's cloak to disguise himself. And that was what he became. That's what he lived for the next 40 years. He lived as a failure. And that's why he was so upset with God. Not because God was God, wasn't even impressed with that, it seemed like, but because God was calling him to something he had already failed at and he couldn't bear to do it again. So that was his first argument. Who am I? And the second argument was, who is God? Who shall I say sent me? It's easy to disqualify God where, he looked at the Israelites for the past 400 years. Where was God? Where was God? Who are God? Who is God? What? Why did you not come when we needed you back then? Why did you leave me alone when I was trying to save the people? Why did you do that? A lot of times when we disqualify God. It's an easy way out. Because if we disqualify, negate him, then we don't have to do what he wants. We have an argument. Why should we do that? He wasn't there when I needed him. Keep that in mind, okay? Question 3. And that wasn't working, by the way. God wasn't impressed. God knew he was going to be arguing like this. So none of his arguments made sense to himself, I think, even. So argument 3, the objection 3 is, well, what if? What if? What if is the perfect argument for those whose faith has been placed in fear, afraid of failing, afraid of succeeding. Do you even afraid of trying? Afraid of what people think? Bullied in school? I remember when I was bullied in school, believe it or not. I used to be kind of in the popular section in 7th grade, but I was very poor, and I didn't have the clothes everybody had, and I don't know. I'm trying to give reasons, right? So then I came to school. We had about 10 of us that every morning we go, hi, and we and then I went and I go, hi, this particular morning. And they all looked at me, turned around, and walked off. They left me there alone. And then I would get these notes. We think you need to be dead. We think you're ugly. You have no right to be living. All right, so I got on the bus. And because I was a Christian at an early age, and I had a feeling, this isn't right. What they're doing isn't right, and what they're saying is not right. And I remember being alone on the bus waiting for everybody else to get on. And I said, Lord, I like the way you made me. I feel like I want to cry, but I'm not going to cry because I like the way you made me, and I know you love me, and I know that I'm unique. I'm different, and that's okay. So help me to forgive these girls. And help me just to focus on you, even at that age, right? Help me to just accept your love and be happy with who I am. So 20 years later, it was 30 years later, I met up with one of them accidentally. And then one of the first things that came out of her mouth was, I'm so sorry we treated you so badly. I had forgotten about it because I let it go years ago, and she was still burdened with it. So all that to say, you know what? It doesn't matter what people think. So don't use that as an excuse. What if people think I'm weird? Who cares? You're weird. All right, accept it. It's okay. You're weird, but you're uniquely weird, and that's great. And then some of us are afraid that our past, we're so ashamed of it, that our past will be catching up with us. I have a friend named Wes who used to be a neo-Nazi, and he hated blacks and he wanted to kill them, and he hated anybody whose ethnicity wasn't white or blue eyes. Just a real solid neo-Nazi. Then he had an amazing conversion to God, and God changed that whole thing. And he was so ashamed for years, I was a neo-Nazi. I hated people. But then when God finally called him, he thought, you know what? I don't care what people think. I was a neo-Nazi. That's not who I am now. And I'm going to work for God. And he's got the most fabulous ministry that deserves a book, which I wrote, but it can't be published at this point. But because it's too dangerous for his ministry. But he now sacrifices his life for those that he once hated. That's what God does. No what ifs. No what are they going to think about me? What if I fail? What if, nuh-uh. He said, I'm going in the power of God. We are not defined by our past. We are not defined by what people think of us. Okay, get that straight right now. Okay, and then number 4, well, I've never been good at. Okay, all right. So in Exodus 4:10, Moses said, Lord, I have never been eloquent. I am slow of speech and tongue. And then Acts 7:22 says, Moses was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians and was mighty in words and deeds. When we label ourselves with a lie often enough, our faith grows in that deception. Soon we actually believe it. That misplaced faith dictates our entire life. So we're going to practice doing it the other way. Let's go on. Okay, another objection that he had was send someone else. All right, isn't that easy? We forfeit, we abdicate our destiny because we're so focused on what we're not that let's send somebody else who can really do it. Okay, Moses wanted to abdicate his calling, and his focus was placed in his own lack and not in God's power or in God's promises. God promised to be with him, but Moses' faith grew in the focus of his own inability. Okay, so something was lost in the translation. God gave in to Moses and said, all right, I'll give you your brother, Aaron. Okay, that's who you want, that's who you'll get. That was the biggest mistake Moses ever did. God's promised to talk to Moses, then Moses talks to Aaron, then Aaron talks to the Israelites. But Aaron, the mouthpiece, was the biggest thorn in Moses' flesh. And he grumbled against Moses. He led the children of Israelites into idolatry. It was one of the worst things that happened in Moses' ministry. You know, one time, I got to tell you, and I'm going to be talking about this next week, I have to confess that one time the Lord was talking to me about going to see this lady. I was in the soccer field with my boys, and this lady was this beautiful lady who was in charge of picture day on soccer day. And so the Lord said, go speak to her about me. And I'm going, well, okay. So I start walking over there, right? And then I saw her. She was so beautiful, so gracious. She had this perfect husband. She had the perfect kids. And I turned around. I looked at me, came up short. Literally. No. I came up short in my mindset. And I'm going, she doesn't need me. I turned around and walked away in that mindset of disqualification. And then 2 weeks later, I found out that lovely lady had committed suicide. Now, the Lord loved her way too much to stop trying to reach out to her because of my silly self-disqualification. But the point is that I missed out. I missed out on a possibly beautiful friendship. I missed out of maybe being instrumental in helping her through the problems that she was going through at the time. I missed out. Okay, we get trapped in this disqualified closet. But you got to understand the enemy. We do have a spiritual enemy, right? And we all know who he is. He's evil. And he is afraid of us. You know, the Gospels show how the demons were scared to death of Christ and the apostles. And like in Philippians 4:13, it says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Okay, so what we believe then, what Satan is afraid of, is that if you start believing what God says and instead of the disqualification that you've done on yourself, then he's dead meat. And he doesn't want that. And he'll try every deception in his possible way to get us to defocus so that he doesn't have to be afraid of us. We can do all things through Christ. All right, so don't miss out. Really, I don't want you to miss out. When God calls, it's because he trusts us. We have to hear his calling, believe his calling, and instead of looking at us, we can look at him and know that he will bring us up to the level. I think, I think we're so afraid that we don't understand that God is going to nurture us. He's going to educate us. He's going to bring us up to the level where we need to be. I went to a mission. The Lord had called me to sing to this mission, to rescue mission. And on the way, I thought, I was singing, practicing beforehand. And the song goes, I will be here when you feel like being quiet, when you need to speak your mind. I will listen and I will be here when your laughter turns to crying. Through the winning, losing, and trying, we'll be together 'cause I will be here. That's, I think, I forget who wrote it, but I'll find out and I'll put it in the thing. Um, God, no matter what you're going to do, will be with you. You've got to understand that. And then I was thinking, okay, God's with me. And I went in the car and I was on the way to the rescue mission and my car conked out. And it was in the desert, 3 digits, hot. Okay. There was no one in sight. The sun was out. I got out and it was so hot. I called the roadside service. They couldn't get to me for hours. I'm thinking, I wish I could sit down. And I'm going, if I sit in that car, I will die. But then I kept feeling, and I heard this, I looked up and there was a cloud covering the sun. And then I heard this voice kind of saying, go in the car. So I went in the car, and this is a miracle. There was a breeze coming out of my car. And I'm looking at the windows. All the windows were closed. So for 2 hours, I sat in that car, drinking my water, in this refreshing breeze that I don't know where it came from. God was there. So whatever God calls you to, don't be afraid of it. Go for it, because you're going to have so much fun. All right? I want to pray for you right now. God's a promise keeper. He keeps his promise and he will be with you. And let me pray right now for you guys. Lord, I know the time is going, but I'm so excited that no matter what, your calling is so right on. If you called us for something, it's because we can do it. We can do all things through you. We don't have to be afraid of what people think. We don't have to be afraid of the circumstances. We don't have to be afraid of failure. All we need to do, we have to be afraid that we'll lose out if we don't heed your calling. So I'm praying right now for courage, that you replace fear with courage, and that you bless all of us with your special callings. Some are little, some are big, but you are in it. These divine appointments are so important to us, not just to us, but mainly to the people that we're going to be ministering to. It involves all of us. When we're involved with God, we're involved with all of it, all of the blessing. So Lord, bless my listeners right now and just bless them with your Holy Spirit's presence. We ask in Jesus' name. Amen. We will see you next week, and we're going to be talking about something very special. Okay, something a little bit different, but I want you to be there. Goodbye. God bless you guys.
And you alone, your promises, they are your from our faith is in you. Your promises, they are your from our faith is in you. And you alone, your promises, they are your from our faith is in you. Your promises, yeah. Your promises.
The preceding program was brought to you by the Holy Spirit Broadcasting Network, HSBN Television.